Welcome back to Underground Strategy Podcast. My name is Max and I'm here with Tony as usual. It is Christmas and we are never resting. We are on active duty 24/7. That's why we are sitting here just one day after Christmas, or 2 days if you're not a heathen, or if you are a heathen like the Swedes and you celebrated on the 24th. So how are things going, Tony? Are you still alive?
Ho, ho, ho. Yeah, no, it does remind me of a Bruce Willis quote that we're not going to say out in full because this is a clean show. But good. Happy Christmas. I'm looking forward to today's discussion, the military Christmas. Let's see what we have in store. Do you have any kind of thinking about where you are now and then like looking back over time? Do you have anything that pops into your head about like what your experiences were over Christmas, maybe when deployed, maybe when growing up?
Yes, Tony, I have. Of course, I have been, I was always very fond of Christmas as a kid. I really enjoyed it, not for the gifts, but for the coziness. I always liked the winter season, you know, when it's cold outside and you can come home and it's warm and cozy. Maybe you have a fire going, there is hot cocoa, there is good food, that kind of coziness, and you get the family together. But it's also kind of relaxed because in my family, we never, or when I grew up, we never celebrated this. We never had these intense family celebrations. We had large family celebrations, but they were quite toned down. So everybody, you know, somebody is reading a book, somebody is having a drink, somebody is watching TV. A few of them are eating. So it's that kind of, you know, do whatever you want kind of thing. Somebody are playing board games. So I have fond memories of Christmas like that.
And that's my favorite time of Christmas, or my favorite type of Christmas, at least, you know, when everyone's just on their own in their own space, reading a book, as you said, having a drink, doing whatever they want to do. That's my favorite types. And also those moments around the table where everyone's just super chilled, eating something, having a laugh, and then, yeah, the day just kind of takes its own rhythm.
I've had so many shocks in my life especially in the United States. I've done a few Christmases in the United States and they're great. I'm not going to lie. I mean, they have all the trimmings. They light up their houses. It looks like, Las Vegas, all of it. But it's also very intense because there is a requirement of some kind of active, massive participation. You know, it's going to be singing and dancing. It's going to be very, very happy, and it's not going to be chill. It's going to be more like a show. It's like putting on a show, even if it's not. It's genuine. It's for me. That's used to chill Christmases. It's like putting on a show where you have to play a part, and you can't. If you're sitting in a corner and just take a minute for yourself and read a book or listen to a podcast or yes, whatever, that is like, oh, what's going on? Are you not happy? Why are you not engaging? And I'm like, yeah, I am, but I've just to get a little break from that. So,
I agree with that, Max. I spent a couple of years in the US and I've had a couple of Christmases there, and I think it is just like you say. My experience may have been a little bit different, but yeah, it did feel like things were certainly lit up, and it was really cool. There were all the things in Times Square, all the parks, etc. So it was really interesting. Also, I had most of my Christmases were in South Africa, and then growing up, or Namibia or Spain, where I grew up at different times. And so I had the cold that you had mentioned in the north of Spain. But then in South Africa, where there were many, many, many Christmases, it was definitely more of a warm Christmas. So maybe foreign to people in the Northern Hemisphere. So that would be Christmas lunches and then braais the day before or the day after, braai being a barbecue, as you well know. But so it does change it a little bit. Of course, all the same traditions, etc. And then, but a little bit different. Have you had any warm Christmases, Max?
I have. And I mean, when you talk about the warm Christmases, I think it's important because the context for most people, no matter what you are, if you're somewhat in tune with the Western traditions, if we can call them that, they are that Christmas is cold, right? You have Santa Claus, you have reindeers, you have the North Pole and all of that. So it's always weird for me when you have it in a warm climate, because it's kind of the whole idea of Christmas is broken. But yes, I had a few. I have spent Christmas in parts of Africa. I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan a few Christmases. So it has been different, but I kind of think that one gets on board with it, because the tradition of Christmas is basically getting together, right, with people that you like, and you do something and you have a bit of time, to wind down, I would say. But so as long as you keep that part intact, I would say it's pretty good wherever you are.
That is the most important part. And on that note, I think we want to send out Christmas wishes, compliments of the season, and our greetings to everyone deployed or those in difficult circumstances and war zones. We know we can't say we know in those specific cases but it is difficult, and really our best wishes over this difficult time. And we hope that you have, as Max says, time to get together with a few people, even in those circumstances, and share a special moment or two.
Yeah, we do. And for everyone else, this is us not wishing you a good Christmas, because it's only for service members. No, everyone should have a great Christmas, deployed or not deployed. It's a time for a bit of reflection and get yourself together for the new coming year. So, have you ever been deployed, Tony, during a Christmas?
Yeah, I've had a few Christmases deployed. I'm trying to think back. I remember a fun Christmas when I think it was the end of 2014 in the east of the Congo. And we actually had our Christmas lunch with the demining team, who are all also former South African military service men. And I say men because they were only guys, living there. And they were mostly combat engineers. So it's the folks that I had known previously, all from different parts of the military, etc. And they had a house and they did these amazing braais. So it was one of the warm Christmases, and they did a spit braai. So it was this lamb, and I must say, they must be like on MasterChef or something, because the marinade and the preparation was amazing. So I just landed, and they became a surrogate family, over this time. Yeah, so a shout out to everyone at Meckham and all the deminers out there doing a great job, and also providing.
And also a reminder that they should apply to MasterChef, as I understand it.
Definitely go for MasterChef. It's they did an amazing. You know what it's like, Max. They're in this difficult place being deployed, and more than deployed, they actually live there for extended periods of time. So they would spend years in that mission just taking out unexploded ordnance. And so they make it their home as best they can. They obviously know the logistical systems to bring in all the things they need. Yeah, they made it really special. So that was a good Christmas at a difficult time. And also we had a few unfortunate situations just before that. So I remember one person passing away, and just that difficult process of having to tell their family, at that time, not me, but, some colleagues that had to tell them, and the investigations and all the things that went on afterwards. So it really mixes those different emotions up, that you're dealing with something difficult, a tragedy, and then on the other hand, still coming together with friends and celebrating Christmas and that special moment. How about yourself, Max? Anything that comes to mind from your deployments and having Christmas?
And as you said here, the mission kind of goes on, or it goes on. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, or Midsummer, or whatever you're celebrating. It goes on, and people will still, go on missions. They will get hurt. They will be in traumatic experiences. They will have good days and all of that. So it's Christmas or not, it's still the same. And I guess that is not only when you're deployed. It goes for the rest of the world as well, because things happen all the time. But I have been deployed quite a few times, and I would say that for me, it is. I usually try not to think too much about it, because I have this kind of set feeling that I want to have on Christmas. But it's basically unavoidable, because when you're you can be at a small fire base, you can be at a FOB, you can be at a bigger base. You always will have these dudes and girls that will start, doing their best to make Christmas something. And it's usually not it's usually logistic people, right? Because they start getting stuff in, Swedish coffee, julmust, which is a festive drink that we have. They get the right ham, they get the right trimmings, they get the pickled herring. So whether you like it or not, somebody's going to force that Christmas, a bit of Christmas into you. And it's usually great. They get a slice of home just for a moment. And I think it has been good. For me, it's been good. But it's always, it gets a bit nervous as well, because you're going to have people going out on patrols. Maybe people are already on patrols or in an OP or doing something. And it feels like it's extra dangerous over Christmas, because you don't want something to happen on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or something like that. So it's a bit, but I spent actually, I think I spent 2 Christmases in an OP, which is weird. But then the team sent out a few chocolate bars and Snickers and stuff like that when we got some food delivered in. So
yes, kind of them. Can you tell our listeners what an OP is, Max, just to be clear?
Yes, that's an observation post. And usually when I speak about OP, an observation post, I'm going to have a short rant, as you know that I like to talk about it. It can be basically anything. It can be a guard tower. It can be...
I'm going to stop Max there for a second. So in the book, there's a whole annex dedicated to this rant. Just so you know, the man is serious about OPs.
I am. I do like them. Maybe it had too much, but it can be anything where you are observing from, and it can be either it can be in the open, or it can be a hidden with a hidden purpose. And mostly when I talk about OPs, it's a hidden OP that you hide in an apartment, or you hide in the forest, and you kind of try to blend in with nature, and it's really tiny and it's uncomfortable, and you lie there and look for bad guys usually. So so I spent a few Christmases in there as well, which is it actually has zero coziness, and Christmas means unfortunately nothing, but still, it is what it is, and somebody is going to make it festive with the chocolate bar or something, so you cannot avoid it.
Yeah, that's I can't imagine a worse place to spend Christmas, Max. Maybe in a trench when it's cold and wet would be a little bit worse. Yeah, fair play to you for doing that at that difficult time. And all through history, we're calling this the military Christmas, and I think all through history there were difficult moments where folks faced these challenging situations and still tried to find something special. Can I go way back in time and read a couple of lines from Christmas message in 1941 from Winston Churchill? I'm talking about going to one of the old school legends. So he says, "I spent this anniversary and festival far from my country, far from my family, yet I cannot truthfully say that I feel far from home. Whether it be the ties of blood on my mother's side, or the friendships I have developed here over many years of active life, or the commanding sentiment of comradeship in the common cause of great peoples who speak the same language, who kneel at the same altars, and, to a very large extent, pursue the same ideals, I cannot feel myself a stranger here in the center, at the summit of the United States. This is a strange Christmas Eve. Almost the whole world is locked in deadly struggle, and with this, most terrible weapons which science can devise, the nations advance upon each other." I'm now going to go a little bit ahead, and we get the feeling what he was going for over there. And he ends with, "Let the children have their night of fun and laughter. Let the gifts of Father Christmas delight their play. Let us, grown-ups, share to the full in their unstinted pleasures before we turn again to the stern task and the formidable years that lie before us. Resolved that, by our sacrifice and daring, these same children shall not be robbed of their inheritance or denied their right to live in a free and decent world. A happy Christmas to you all." Pretty heavy for 1941. The world's just
pretty heavy stuff.
It's the Second World War, not looking good for Britain at that point. So Dunkirk had happened. Churchill gives this strong message, and he kind of identifies with some of these common themes. You've mentioned one of them, coming together with family, Max.
Yeah, I think that it's a powerful message, but I think Churchill had that kind of message all along, and it was important for him, that kind of cohesion within Britain as a unit. And I'm talking a bit out of term here since I'm not even from there, but that's the feeling I get from most of his stuff, actually, during the war. And I think this is a good example of it. And I think it's still valid today, of course.
I think you're right. He did mobilize the language, the English language. He did have an ability to give those messages at difficult times. And to be fair, he put his money where his mouth was in the First World War, that is, and certainly in the Second World War. Do you have any kind of thoughts on other letters from this time, or any kind of pieces that you want to share and just take us back as we look at the kind of military Christmas narrative?
Yes, I definitely do, Tony. And I'm just going to quickly mention that I got a Christmas letter from a combat zone myself when I was a kid, and that was from my father. So I remember that I got a postcard from, he probably bought it on an American base. It was that Desert Storm postcard. I'm going to try to find it and put a picture in the show notes. But I got a Desert Storm postcard, and he wrote on Christmas Eve and said that they had been on high alert because they had a few Scud missiles coming over their heads, but otherwise it was well, and that he bought me a present that he would give me when he came home, blah, blah. So that was what I was, when was the Gulf War, 91? Or?
Yeah.
It's weird that I don't know exactly when it was, but I think it was around 91. He was a surgeon in this, it was like a multinational field hospital kind of arrangement, and the Swedes had responsibility for that. So he was serving there as well. In the OG Desert War, at least when we are talking about modern wars. But then Afghanistan came and shown all of them, if you can say it like that. But nobody talks about the desert. I actually think Desert Storm is kind of a interesting war. Nobody talks about it anymore, but I saw a guy, I'm just going to go off in a tangent now, but...
Yeah, go for it.
I saw a post of... it was just a map and the attack corridors of different units and how it was going to go down. And even if it was not heavy fighting, it was a quite massive operation, it was a massive operation, and the scale and the amount of people participating and the movement, sometimes I think people should speak more about it, because even if it was not a heavy, as in combat heavy conflict, there is still quite a few epic moments and some lessons that can be learned from that.
Yeah,
definitely. So I think we have to make a Gulf War special at one point. But I'm going to get back to the Christmas letters. So when I was a kid, not when I was a kid, but when I was younger, I was always interested in the Vietnam War. I think the interest came from, I don't know if you ever seen the series or if you remember it. There was, when I grew up, like after midnight, they had all of these strange series. And one of them was Platoon B in Vietnam, kind of an epic series as I remember it. I will never rewatch it because it's going to destroy me, because I remember it as epic now, but it was probably shit. But I enjoyed that. And when I was a kid, I thought that I saw the Vietnam War as the only real war. I was a bit weird as a kid, but I think that was my visualization of what the war was when I was a kid, because I couldn't identify with the Second World War, and I couldn't identify with the Cold War, because you're 10 years old, who can identify with the Cold War, or you're 5 years old or something like that. It's going to be weird.
For sure.
But I found two short paragraphs from a letter the first one was written on Christmas Eve in 1966. It was a soldier that was deployed in a small village in South Vietnam. And of course, this is in the very beginning. And he writes to his wife on December 25th. And he said, "Last night, we had a candle lighting ceremony. Gasoline drums welded together end to end with a white Noel on the side. Electric light on top covered by red cellophane. Reindeer and Santa Claus at the front. It was raining." And he ends with affection to his wife, but I think it says it all. It kind of embodies the whole war experience for me, because you're trying in crude ways to make it as homely as you can, and then boom, it was raining. It's back to reality immediately, It's back to the operational stuff. But I think Yeah, I think it's spot on there with the feeling.
That rain, the cold, the dampness, the lack of comfort that you get from the wet. Yeah, it brings it all home. And, the fact that he reflects on it in his letter, yeah, it speaks volumes.
Yeah, it kind of it shows the mindset of where you're at. They're in the jungle. It's humid. It's wet. It's very uncomfortable. They try to do something. They have a reindeer, a Santa Claus, some electric lights, but it was also raining. So it kind of, it gives me a feeling that it was not very cozy, but he's also writing this very candid to his wife. And then it's it's just one line from an army general that also wrote to his wife. He was at the same day, but he was deployed in another part of Vietnam, and they had heavy fighting. And he says in his letter that, and he describes nothing about Christmas. He describes about what happened in his life, and he was they were going on an extraction, and I don't know why a general would be on an extraction helicopter, but he was for some reason. The door gunner was killed, and he took over, and he says to his wife, "We all were shooting, and we killed several." So that was another Christmas reality, because his mind was obviously very far from the Christmas mode, and he was basically in full operational mode. And I can also reflect that, because if you're doing active combat operations on Christmas, you will probably not even think about Christmas, not even once, because it's about the essentials first, surviving more or less.
Yeah, very tragic, and just it brings home just how close one gets to basics of human instinct, like survival first, and that reflects in those letters, where there's just a line and of course just a moment to reflect with that one-liner. And I've got one here that really matches your first one from the soldier in the Vietnam War. And because on this podcast and in some of our work, we like to get different narratives, so we don't take any political stance on anything. And of course we of course acknowledge the Nazi regime was an evil regime. But here I'm going to use a letter from a Nazi soldier. And here there was a person writing to his wife. And he says, "I have traveled to you today without a leave, without a ticket, with only the baggage of my dreams and thoughts, to be with you when the candles on the Christmas tree are lit. I have come only in my thoughts. That's the way it is." So here he is very poetic in the way he says it, how he's thinking back to them. And he goes on to say, "I am thinking of when I left in August 1939. I think of how the days and the weeks have passed. I think of the first war Christmas in a bunker along the West Wall, where a miserable and scrawny little tree lit Christmas Eve." So he goes on speaking about his initial experiences. And he says, "But now I am with you. You have lit the candles, focusing entirely on the moment. A deep current flows in you. The children stand over there, feverishly impatient to learn what Santa Claus has bought." I will now go on a little bit more. And he says, bringing it back to the reality of the moment, and similar to what you have said previously, Max, he says, "As I write this letter, it is 3 a.m. A small candle casts its light in my narrow quarters, making all appear softer. Around me are my sleeping comrades. All is well. I feel deeply thankful and happy, even as someone snores in the close confines." I leave a bit more and I go on. I say, "We have no Christmas tree here with flickering candles. Outside, the cold blows against our lonesome quarters. The sentry boots crunch in the snow. 12 steps forward, 12 steps back. Sometimes the sentry stops for a moment, perhaps to look at the stars, silent and friendly comrades in the winter sky." This was in the Eastern Front during the Second World War. So it just brings that whole tragedy to life, looking for that moment of peace, of comfort, and still serving. And it's the same for soldiers on each side of it, for those at least that celebrate Christmas. Pretty powerful stuff, right?
Pretty powerful. And I just have to take note here, because they really could write letters back in the day. I mean, today we send each other one of these Chinese-made gifts that we have pre-installed on our phone. And back then, everyone from Churchill to a Nazi soldier to the Vietnam jungle, they could play with words and they understood it. It was this kind of slow talking to each other. It doesn't have to be instantaneous. So they took their time, and it really shows. And I mean, I'm quite ashamed when I see what we have become these days. Because seriously, would you ever write a letter like this anymore?
No, I wouldn't. I think when I first kind of left school and went to the army, I still had a few pen pals and we wrote to each other. And then maybe a couple of letters to my wife, like on our anniversary. So that I would have done a few years ago, but definitely before kids. Now there's no time. But I agree with you. It's definitely a cultural element that's now missing, or that's been largely forgotten, where it's been something important. That I remember when I joined the army, and my dad, coming from the 1950s, would give me a stack of envelopes as part of, the different bits of kit that I had taken along. And this was his tradition and many others. And now that you've got me going on the subject, I have a book, and I'll maybe put it in the show notes, where they go even a step further, Max, where you've mentioned people during the 1940s, essentially 30s and 40s, doing really well at their writing. And this professor or author has researched the First World War and the letters from there. And he says, actually, in his view, they were so much better then. So 1914, or the 1910s, right? 1914 to 18, and the ones that he's collected compared to the Second World War. It's obviously a subjective opinion, but I'm just saying it seems that as one goes further back, there was a much stronger writing tradition, of course, given the technology and what it was back then. And then if we go on a straight line from there, we have the telegraph, phones, and letters becoming maybe less and less, or we use it, not as common at least. And now we get just the 10-word WhatsApp and the occasional tweet.
Yeah, and I think that I actually had hoped that we would evolve differently, right? So we would have shorter writing, but even more quality, compressed into these short tweets and short words. But it's actually, and I'm going to be crude, it's mostly shit. You get a "what's up" on your phone, and that's it. Like that's what it has become. From these letters, it's now a "what's up, Christmas, Xmas, dude," and that's what you get. And you get 15 of those, and you send 15 similar replies, and then
a few emojis. A few punchlines, a couple of,
Yeah, so I think it was, I think it's weird. When I was a kid, we used to write, as you said, Christmas cards, from the family, as you usually did. And it was important. We received, 20, 30, 40, a bunch every year, and we sent the same amount. And my mother always said that this is one of the most important things to connect with people every year, to keep that connection. And this is a good, very unintrusive way to do it. Even if you don't like them that much, you maintain that relationship. And the same lesson was reinforced to me by an Israeli Mossad agent that said to me in my early career that whatever you do, everyone that you know that might have, this is a bit more crude, but that might have value for you, at some point, for any reason, you send them at least one manual letter per year, because that will reinforce, or it will cement your status as a friend, because you took the time to send a letter from somewhere. If you're on a business trip or on a holiday and you just have a quick postcard, and they will be there, or they might be there at least when you need them.
Yeah.
For something like Andy said in the episode where we had him, where he was, it was an op that went haywire, and he said that he needed to go. He went alone into town, and he found a phone, and he called a friend, and his parents lived close by, and they came and picked him up with the truck. And that's the kind of people you need to network with. And so, long story short, that it's good. It's a good Christmas is not a bad time to reinforce your friendship.
We do have a card writing tradition in my home, at least, and many other friends and family. So Christmas cards, birthday cards, it might not be as detailed as it once was. Talking about that kind of cards and letters, an important one, and I think it's maybe been spoken about a lot, but that's the 1914 spontaneous Christmas truce.
Yeah.
And I think it's been said a lot, but I think we have to mention it here, Max. It kind of is pretty cool. And what happened there was captured in the letters from the soldiers who had experienced that. I think it was something important. And it brings forward this human element. So soldiers on both sides, everyone in their trench in the Western Front, not having the greatest time. But on Christmas Day, they come out of their trenches and they meet and exchange gifts and some bits and pieces. And I'll give you a short extract just to give the flavor from Sergeant James McCormack, who wrote, "Our regiment went out and met the Germans halfway and had an exchange of greetings. They gave us cigars for fags, and it was a great joke. A lot of them could speak English, and they were asking us, when we going to give it up and go home? They hear nothing but German victories every day. They are never told of defeat." And all that happening on Christmas Day in the First World War, Mac. And they just took a moment there, just as human beings, to come out and shake hands and have a bit of banter.
Yeah, and I think that is probably the most famous kind of this Christmassy moment. Because you have read so many accounts on this spontaneous Christmas truce, and you have heard about football games being played between Germans and Allied soldiers, and a lot of those accounts. Of course, I don't know if all of them are true, but you get the kind of sense that these are regular, and it was regular people, and they're getting tired, and they want just a tiny slice of normality just for a moment. But I think we see less of that in modern times, of course, because now battle is about being effective. And usually, if you would speak to any of my former colleagues, they would say, "Yeah, strike during holidays because it will deprive morale even worse." So I think we have the mindset that's the mindset of a professional. But back in the days, or still, most wars are fought by regular people, and one tends to forget that. So yeah, I think it's a very moving account.
Yeah,
it's a very moving. And I wish that there were more things like that, but I will, unfortunately, I don't think we will see any spontaneous Christmas truce ever again, because I don't think that is what we do anymore. It's so dehumanized, everything, it's drones, it's everything is automated, it's missile strikes. There is nothing like this, and it's good that we don't have that much trench war over years and years. But we kind of have in Ukraine. Yeah, it's complicated, but it shows the human aspect of it, I think, very well.
Yeah, it does. It does bring out the humanity in it, even in the most dire of circumstances. I think at this point, I'm ready to reach out and ask if we are going to get any letters from our listeners. We do welcome them also in email form, tweet, Insta, DM, or any other way that you wish to send us an email or a letter.
But as you have heard, you have to dare to send it, since we have obviously high requirements how it should be written.
Yeah, no, it's very high requirements. It's high standards, but we'll settle for anything. So on the face of it, it's high, but we take what we can get back in underground strategies. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wish that everyone is happy with friends, family, or making this day as special as possible. And then last words to you, Max.
Thank you, Tony. It's been a blast talking with you over Christmas, and I hope this episode brought some Christmas spirit to all of you out there. We're also sending our special thoughts to the Ukrainians and all their allies that are fighting in Ukraine right now. They are also actually celebrating Christmas now, or they did on the 25th, since they changed their dates from Orthodox Christmas, that is in January. Well, we wish you a happy Christmas, and we hope you have a great rest of the holidays and a happy new year. We will actually be back with one more episode before the new year. But other than that, we will see you next time, and you have a great one. Bye-bye.
Happy Christmas.